Right, we continue looking at the Zimbabwe story, and I'm now joined in our studios here by MDC spokesperson in South Africa, Mr. Austin Moyo, and PhD student at the University of Johannesburg, Senzo Moyo, for a discussion on developments in Zimbabwe. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to you.
Thank you.
Let me talk to you first, Mr. Moyo. Let me start with, because I spoke to you before, so let me start with the other Mr. Moyo, who's studying at University of Johannesburg. What is your take on, first of all, I suppose it wasn't a surprise that Robert Mugabe was going to disappoint. After all, it was a press conference that he called.
Well, I think the starting point is to emphasize that whatever is happening in Zimbabwe is a ZANU PF internal issue. So what's happening there, and the fact that it's so fluid, it keeps changing, we don't even know what's happening. So it was really not a surprise that Mugabe did not resign as people expected. But what is surprising, especially for me, is the fact that the army went on to broadcast it live without even attempting to pre-record Mugabe's speech so that they understand where he stands. Which means, in a way, they could have even known before that live broadcast that Mugabe was not going to resign, which is contra to what everyone in Zimbabwe expected.
All right. Do you think, though, that it might have been deliberate that they did that to create the impression that this man is free and he is not being censored and that he is actually the president? Well,
we can't deny that that possibility might be there. But what I also see is that there might be a disconnect between what the war veterans and ZANU PF expect and what the army expects. The army is precisely on trying to correct what Mugabe has done. The ZANU PF and the war veterans want Mugabe out. So there is no connection in terms of what these two want. So the army, I think, for now, is a bit content with what Mugabe is doing, and that's why they're not. They don't seem to.
So are you saying that the army might still be happy with President Mugabe as president as long as he gets rid of a few people?
Yes, I'm saying that, and I'm saying as long as they get a guarantee that they're not going to be arrested because of what they've done, they will be willing to live with what is happening now. Only up to the extent that probably Mugabe promises them that he's going to step down at the Special Congress.
Okay, MDC spokesperson, Mr. Moyo, what's your take, on what happened last night and what this impeachment process that's going to need the help of MDC to push through?
There are so many behind-the-scenes activities that are taking place, and then all we have to know is what comes to us. But as the MDC, we have actually taken a stance that what is wanted by the people of Zimbabwe will take precedence of everything else. Therefore, our number one priority is to see Mugabe going in whatever means through that impeachment. So our 71 MPs, they would be standing to make sure that Mugabe lives. Because in a battle, you have got one goal. Once that goal is achieved, then we will now face up with the ZANU PF to see whatever way that we're going forward to the next elections. We know that there might not be an inclusive or a transitional authority, but that is okay with us. What we want is that the UN and the regional bodies should actually be the security, or they should promise us that they will look after the process of voter registration leading up to the elections, so that we know that when we get to the elections, we are on a level playing field and the results will not be disputed.
Do you think that the elections will happen, or that you'll be forced into a government of national unity as you were in 2008?
At the moment, there's no talk of any transitional authority or anything of that sort. Judging from what the careless statement made by Chinamasa yesterday, we think that behind the scenes, there is no talks about any transitional authority. So we're not planning anything around that. We are planning to make sure that when people continue to register, the regional bodies, since they've ran to Zimbabwe to try and monitor the situation, they should be able to make sure that Zimbabwe prepares for an election next year and it goes ahead.
What is going through the president's mind right now? I mean, he watches television. We've seen him. He loves the news. He listens to international broadcasts. He would have seen Zimbabweans demonstrating against him. Today, he would have seen university students saying, we're not going to write exams. We're going to shut down the school until you resign. What's going through his mind?
I think a lot is going through his mind. But the bottom line is that he understands that people in Zimbabwe have gone through a hard time. But he also accepts that that's not only because of him, it's because of ZANU PF as a party. So to get rid of Mugabe and leave ZANU PF, I don't think that's a plausible way of doing things. So he is saying, whatever the Zimbabweans have gone through, it cannot be me as a person that have done that. It's ZANU PF. That's why yesterday even indicated that there are a lot of things that have happened within the party that needs to be corrected. And these are things that we're going to be talking about at our Congress. So to him, the problem is not necessarily him, but the problem is ZANU PF and the politics within ZANU PF that needs to be corrected.
But this is something perhaps he should have been saying before. Has the horse bolted already? Is it too late for him to recover this situation?
Well, I think that question applies to everyone. I mean, where was the rest of ZANU PF all along, only to act now? Just last week when Mnangagwa was fired, I think all the 10 provinces in Zimbabwe supported the president's decision. All of a sudden, now Mnangagwa seems to be coming back. Everyone is now supporting Mnangagwa. So when we're looking at principles within ZANU PF, principles are not there. So people can just somersault anytime. And that problem is not only with Mugabe, it's with everyone that is in ZANU PF.
Mr. Moyo, is it a question that perhaps right now we need some governance and not necessarily the government that we want entirely? And so that's probably why some people are finding the Mnangagwa solution more palatable as an interim measure.
For us, our stance is not to give life to ZANU PF. We gave life to ZANU PF in the inclusive government. For us, our focus is on the elections. Because if there is any transitional authority, that in essence actually endorses ZANU PF and it gives it life. But as it is, ZANU PF is so cracked. If we go in, then we're actually giving it life. And the cracking in it is falling to pieces. And for us, our focus will actually be to get to the elections.
People have said that the MDC and the opposition generally hasn't really recovered post-2008 elections, post the GNU. Have you got the wherewithal to come together and get the job done this time around?
The alliance that has just been formed, which includes all the parties that had left MDC, is a sign that we are working our issues and we have come together. Unlike ZANU PF that is busy splitting up into bits and pieces, we are uniting, coming together, uniting our original MDC vote, and that should count to something.
I expect that from Mr. Moyo. What's your take?
Well, I find it very surprising that the MDC seems to be vacillating, changing positions in terms of whether they want to be a part of the inclusive government that is being insinuated. And at the same time, they're saying they don't want to be part of that process. The bottom line is, when I started, I said this is an internal ZANU PF issue. So if the MDC goes tomorrow and participate in the impeachment process, in other words, they're actually endorsing ZANU PF. And what will come out of that is a very strong ZANU PF. And for MDC to be able to dislodge that ZANU PF in 2018 during the elections is going to be a very monumental task. So I don't understand why the MDC wants to participate.
But the voters will look at MDC and expect them to do the right thing, inverted commas, and that is to get rid of Robert Mugabe. If they don't do that, they'll get punished at the polls.
But you see, the MDC must have a longer vision. You can't be a political party and then empower your opponent. It doesn't work like that in politics. Of course, when they are reading the mood, the general mood out there, the people are saying they want Robert Mugabe out. But there are two things here that need to be entangled. There is one thing of one issue of taking out Robert Mugabe, but the other one is also bringing in Emmerson Mnangagwa. The people that were on the street want Robert Mugabe out, but they don't necessarily want Mnangagwa to be the president. But if the MDC goes on and supports that motion, then they are taking Mugabe out, but they are also bringing in Mnangagwa, which are two different issues. And as ZANU PF, that has Mnangagwa as the leader, is going to be a very strong one, and it will be very difficult for the MDC to do anything about it.
Mr. Moyo?
No, I don't agree with that. I think there has to be a start. For 37 years, people who are 37 years now are even grandfathers. They have not seen another president in Zimbabwe except Robert Mugabe. So we have to break that trend first and have somebody different to deal with. That will be a start, a perfect start. And then when we go to elections next year, we are dealing with a new situation, which is something that we can manage going forward.
Some people say that Mnangagwa is worse than Mugabe, and you will have been responsible for putting him in.
I understand that. A lot of people have spoken about Mnangagwa and his brutality and all that. But they are the one and the same devil. Maybe Mugabe is a worse devil because he is clinging on to power and refusing to leave. So we need to break that dictatorship and move forward from there. Even if Mnangagwa takes over, what is happening is an internal issue from ZANU PF. We have no control of that. Who they choose after that, according to the constitution, even though we say they are not legitimate, but they are the ruling party now, they will choose someone to take over from Mugabe. That process we can live with, but making sure that people are registering to vote, that we've got a guarantee from the SADC, from UN, that the election will be free and fair and the results will be credible.
Can you see Chiwenga allowing the MDC to win an election and to run the country?
No ways. They are not going to do it. They will not do that. Remember, when Mnangagwa comes in, he's only going to serve, what, for 8-9 months? That's not long enough, and that's not what Mnangagwa wants. Mnangagwa has been waiting for that seat since time immemorial. And Mnangagwa has this strong connection with the army. So therefore, the army will not in our present life, allow the MDC to take over. They will make sure that the MDC does not get to State House. And they've actually shown this to us by doing what they have done. They have the power. They're actually putting Mnangagwa there. They're not going to accept anyone else who they don't want to be there.
All right, finally, Kenneth Kaunda is in Zimbabwe. Does he have enough influence to speak to President Mugabe and say, please step down, my brother?
He might have enough influence, but like I said before, we're dealing here with an old man, and someone, you know, the older you get, you become more stubborn. So his influence cannot add much to what has already happened, because we all expected that he was going to resign. The people took to the streets, and he was going to he issued a press statement yesterday. Everybody was expectant, but we were all disappointed.
Okay, unfortunately, gents, we're going to have to leave it there. But thanks very much indeed for your insights. Austin Moyo from the MDC in South Africa, and PhD students, Senzo Moyo. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Francis.
Thanks, Peter.